How's it going, hockey fans? Hope you're all doing well today. Welcome to the Hockey Stop, your source for all hockey news, hockey opinions, and hockey highlights. So in this video, we're talking about the 3 exhibition games getting played today, the first hockey games from the NHL we've seen since mid-March. And I gotta say, it is so exciting to see hockey back. Even if these are exhibition games, it's a lot more exciting than honestly seeing preseason games after a usual off-season. And it'll be really cool to see some hockey in the summer as well. Now, of course, with exhibition games, and especially with these, the situation for these players, a lot of them have not been able to train much since the quarantine started. And it's going to be probably slower paced hockey than we're used to seeing in the NHL, plus no crowds, which is going to make for a very interesting dynamic. The NHL has worked with EA to add some interesting little edits, like, visuals and, some crowd reactions, some fake crowd reactions. But that's not starting until the playoffs start. So this is going to be kind of like watching, a beer league style, video format with NHL talent. So it's going to be interesting for sure. Yeah, so the 3 games tonight: Pittsburgh Penguins versus the Philadelphia Flyers. Next up, the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Montreal Canadiens. And then the 3rd game, Edmonton Oilers versus the Calgary Flames. You gotta appreciate, for these exhibition games, they're mostly rivalry type games, so it's gonna be fun to see. First up, Pittsburgh Penguins versus the Philadelphia Flyers. Flyers, of course, were seeded higher, in big part for the fact that they were extremely hot. Right before the quarantine started, they were 9-1 in their past 10 games. They just kept winning games. They were unbeatable. And it's tough for a team like that because they just had all the momentum, and with such a long break, they definitely very well could have lost that momentum. Pittsburgh Penguins are definitely struggling, in the past 10 games, 3-7, and, they were, definitely not looking, quite like, the Penguins usually do kind of go through, kind of these, bumps in the road sometimes, and they were just not playing very well in coming to the break. So momentum-wise, this actually might be a bit of an advantage for them because they were able to regroup, rest up, and hopefully try to push for some stronger momentum. Goaltending wise, Tristan Jarry is, my starter personally. Murray, has not been playing well this season, and it's been a little bumpy since, his incredible first 2 seasons where he won back-to-back cups as a rookie. With the Flyers, Carter Hart definitely the starter, and while he had a some start to the season, he has really worked it back around, and he hasn't been putting up quite the numbers that he was during his rookie season, but he's been playing so much better, and I think he's definitely ready for some playoff hockey. Forwards wise, of course, Penguins were used to, them having a lot of offense, Crosby and Malkin, and, some other, I wouldn't call them depth forwards, but, I guess like some secondary players, like, of course, Jake Gensel has been a fantastic finishing winger for this team. And of course, on defense, John Marino has been a great young rookie defenseman for them. And, otherwise, of course, they always have Chris Letang and, Ruedel, and, they have some solid offensive defensemen as well as some defensive defensemen, pretty well rounded. The Flyers, they don't have quite as much offense in terms of the big name superstars. Of course, the first name I think is Claude Giroux, #1 center, but Sean Couturier has really been working on his game, and these past couple seasons have been very impressive for him, and he's the leader in scoring for centers over Giroux, which in the same amount of games, which is pretty surprising at first, but he has really figured out his game. He's definitely one of the star centers in this league and very underrated, and also has a really solid defensive game, so that's really good for him. Otherwise, of course, Kevin Hayes and Van Riemsdyk, their acquisitions in free agency the past couple seasons have been pretty solid. They've been producing at a decent level. And then, of course, Voracek, always, putting up some good numbers, always a good playmaker, probably the best playmaker for this team right now. So, pretty well-rounded offensively. They don't have quite the stars of the Penguins, but I think they have more depth. And then on defense, they definitely improved it. I actually really do like the Jason Braun acquisition from last season. I think he's been a pretty solid piece for the Flyers, and he's, definitely well-rounded their defense. Gostisbehere, it's been a tough season offensively. He hasn't been the same at all since his rookie season or even just those first 2 seasons. So Flyers fans are hope he can, get his game back and going. Provorov and Niskanen have both been, really solid offensively. And Provorov, I think he's going to start to continue to grow. Of course, he's had some bumps in the road, but as a young offensive defenseman, he's, pretty darn good. Comparing the 2 teams, of course, the Flyers are really hot, but they had that break for a few months, so they lose that advantage. And between these 2 teams, I think it's very unpredictable just because, they're all not, quite properly trained, and it'll be interesting to see between them just kind of what kind of speed, some of their stars are going to be displaying. And yeah, it should be a really fun game. Next up, we got the Leafs versus the Canadiens. first looking at, and I love, I mean, I know this rivalry isn't quite, up there with, some of the other ones. With Leafs and Canadiens, I feel like it used to be a lot more intense, but there just hasn't been too much to root for these teams. I mean, of course, the Leafs, have been pretty good the past couple of seasons, but there just hasn't been much energy going, so it'd be cool to see this kind of reignite. Yeah, first looking at goaltending, of course, you got Carey Price, and they say he can steal a series, and I think that's what gives the Canadiens a shot when they face the Pittsburgh Penguins and the play-in round. And then, of course, you got Freddie Anderson for the Leafs, who I think, he's been playing all right. He hasn't been to the level that he was last season. Both goaltenders play against some pretty pissed defense, not going to lie, but they have really similar stats if you look at it. Freddie Anderson, 2.85 goals against average with a 909 save percentage and 3 shutouts. Carey Price, 2.79 goals against average with the same 909 save percentage and 1 more shutout with 4. So very comparable stats. Two, I think, goaltenders that gets, some iffy comments sometimes. Carey Price, people say he's not quite the same. Freddie Anderson, he has his bad games, but in front of their defenses, their stats are pretty good. Next up, you look at offense, of course, prolific offense for the Leafs. You got Austin Matthews, you got Mitch Marner, you got John Tavares. That's the core 3 that really drives this offense. But, they got other players like Nylander, who's been having a much better season after, I guess, just a bit of a dip last year for sure. Kerfoot's been all right. Definitely not been a good replacement for Kadri, but, you have to lose some to get some. And of course, they also got Tyson Barrie, who's been not terrible. He had a really bad start to the season, but he's definitely figured it out for sure a bit more. But yeah, defensively, not very good. Offensively, super prolific with depth. With the Montreal Canadiens, they're obviously not as prolific offensively. Tatar is leading the way with a really remarkable 61 points in 68 games. After, his blunder with Vegas, it's really impressive to see how he's really turned things around the Montreal Canadiens. Really big piece and a great acquisition for Montreal. And then, of course, you got some other depth like Brendan Gallagher, Max Domi. Deneau has been pretty good, pretty underrated guy. Joel Armia, he's been producing. So yeah, they got a pretty decently well-rounded offense, at least in that top 6. Of course, when it comes to the bottom 6, doesn't look quite as good. Not a Dale Weiss fan. Also, yeah, I didn't mention Nick Suzuki has had, a really solid rookie year, and I think he's going to be a really good, center for this team for, quite a few years to come. Good acquisition for them for sure. But yeah, I'm not liking that, I'm not looking at that bottom 6, so that's where they struggle for sure. And defensively, their defense is not great. It is what it is. I mean, of course, Shea Weber leads the way, and Jeff Petrie has, been pretty good offensively. Not a great defensive defenseman though. Yeah, I think both defenses just kind of expose a lot, so I think that's going to be, the downfalls for both in the playoffs, and I don't know how deep either team could go. But their goaltending is pretty strong, I would say, despite, not the best stats. Again, they're not working with the best defense, and while obviously Toronto's a fantastic offense, Montreal, not a slouch. And it should be fun to see just the speed between both two teams tonight, and yeah, we'll see, how the conditioning's been the past few weeks in training camps, and see which team succeeds over the other. Last but not least, we got Oilers versus Flames, one of my favorite current rivalries. You just really feel the heat. I love how Tkachuk, really gets under the skin of these players, because it really just ignites, these brawls and all that, and he's good at it. Yeah, two very talented young teams for sure. Of course, with Oilers, looking at goaltenders first of all. And it's funny how things kind of switched around, because the Oilers, of course, are rocking Mike Smith, whereas the Flames are rocking Cam Talbot. They basically just kind of switched teams. Yeah, look at the Flames goaltending wise. Cam Talbot's been playing a lot better after, having a couple, weaker seasons. But he was kind of the backup, and I think that's kind of more his role. Riddick has been, the starter, and he's been pretty solid. I think when you put Cam Talbot in his starting role, he just isn't quite there. But with the Edmonton Oilers, of course, you got Koskinen. He's having a good sophomore season. People were a little iffy about the contract that they gave for him, but he's been pretty darn good. And Mike Smith, of course, he's played, actually one more game, but he has not been very good. And this, I think, should be a Koskinen start. Exhibition, you don't know, but definitely for the playoffs. Offensively, Edmonton right up front. You've got McDavid, you've got Draisaitl, absolutely leading the way, crazy offense for sure. But, they got some depth now, unlike the past. Of course, they got James Neal, who has been a great trade over, in the whole Lucic-Neal trade. He didn't produce the way that he wanted to in Calgary, but he's turning that around for sure with 19 goals in 55 games already. Hopkins has been very good this season, and Yamamoto, their young rookie, has been producing very well. Zach Cassian, the rough, intense winger, has also been, producing, more than is usual. And overall, they have that depth scoring. They added some depth scoring in Anthony Ciu, so very well-rounded. The Flames offense, they're not quite as heavy forward, because I would not compare McDavid and Draisaitl with players like Gaudreau or Lindholm or Backlund or Monahan or Tkachuk. Like, these are good players, but they're not superstar players. But they got a lot of them. Those are a lot of really quality names to have. And yeah, Calgary's very well-rounded in their top 6, and I would say even in their top 9. Defensively, I'd give the edge to the Calgary Flames. They just got some solid defensive. Of course, Giordano's getting older, but he's still, a really solid defenseman who can put up some offense. Gustafsson they acquired from Chicago. Wasn't quite the way he was last season, but he put up some, some good points. Noah Hannafin, I think he's a pretty solid defenseman. He's not as good as he was expected to be when he was drafted 5th overall, but a solid defensive game, can put up some points, and I think he's pretty well-rounded in that way. But yeah, overall, really solid defense for sure. Oilers, on the other hand, I mean, it's all right. I am a pretty big fan of Darnell Nurse, because I think he has a pretty well-rounded game, but after him, it's just kind of shaky. Of course, Clefbaum, is a pretty good offensive guy, but not the best defensively. Adam Larsson's, he's solid, doesn't really do a whole lot. Ethan Bear's been, pretty solid too. But yeah, I don't know, just a weaker defense. So that's definitely something that they have issues with. But the Oilers kind of push, with their strong offense, and that's kind of how they've been winning games, along with Koskinen having a good season. Between these two teams, I really hope there's some, ignition between them. I would love to see some more heat between Cassian and Tkachuk. Maybe they, go for another fight. We'll see. But I think with this game, I'm really excited to see just kind of the energy between the two teams, because they do not like each other. And I think for that reason, it'll be even more competitive than the other two games, because I think between these two, they want to win this game, just to really shove the other opponent, because I think this rivalry is a real one. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, it's so exciting to see the NHL season start. 3 exhibition games, and let's get into it. Super excited to watch. Let me know what you think in the comments below, who you think is going to win, what are your expectations, and yeah, that's all. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.